There is a moment, and almost everyone who has ever believed in God has had it. A moment where the silence gets too loud, where the prayer feels like it is bouncing off the ceiling, where the thing you trusted God for hasn't come, where someone you loved got sick anyway, where the door you believed was going to open stayed shut. And in that moment, a question surfaces. Quiet at first, then louder, then impossible to ignore. Is he actually there? I'm not going to tell you that question is wrong. I'm not going to tell you that doubt makes you a bad Christian or a weak person or someone with insufficient faith. I am going to show you something. Several things, actually. Because the evidence for God, not the religious version, not the safe Sunday school version, the actual, staggering, make you sit down and reconsider everything evidence, is hiding in plain sight. And once you see it, the question does not disappear, but it changes shape. It stops being, is he there? And it becomes, how did I ever think he wasn't? Stay with me. The first thing, the universe should not exist. Let's start at the very beginning, not Genesis, physics. In 1998, two separate teams of astronomers were measuring the expansion of the universe. They expected to find it slowing down, as gravity pulled everything back toward itself. Standard physics, predictable outcome. Instead, they found the opposite. The universe is not slowing down. It is accelerating. Something is pushing it outward, faster and faster. They called it dark energy because they had no other name for it. They still don't fully understand it. It makes up approximately 68% of everything in the universe, and we cannot directly observe it, measure it, or explain it. But here is the part that should stop you cold. For the universe to produce galaxies, for stars to form, for planets to exist, for life to be possible anywhere, the strength of dark energy had to fall within an extraordinarily narrow range. Physicists call this fine-tuning. If dark energy were even slightly stronger, just one part in 10 to the power of 120, the universe would have expanded too fast for anything to form. No stars, no planets, no you. If it were slightly weaker, the universe would have collapsed back in on itself before the first star ignited. 1 part in 10 to the 120th power. To give you a sense of what that number means, the total number of atoms in the observable universe is estimated at 10 to the 80. The precision required for life-permitting dark energy is incomprehensibly more exact than finding one specific atom in the entire observable universe. And that's just one constant. Physicists have identified over 30 fundamental constants of nature. The gravitational constant, the strong nuclear force, the electromagnetic force, the ratio of electron to proton mass, and every single one of them sits within a range so precise that even tiny variations would produce a universe with no complexity, no chemistry, no life. The Oxford philosopher and mathematician Roger Penrose calculated the probability of the initial conditions at the Big Bang being arranged as they are, by chance, at 1 in 10 to the power of 10 to the power of 123. That number is so large it cannot be written out. There are not enough atoms in the universe to write it out even if you used 1 atom per digit. The universe we live in, the one that permits stars, carbon, water, DNA, consciousness, love, did not have to be this way. The mathematics says it almost certainly should not be this way. And yet, here we are. The second thing, DNA and the information problem. In 1953, Francis Crick and James Watson discovered the double helix structure of DNA. What they found, and what has only become clearer and more staggering in the 70 years since, is that DNA is not a chemical. It is a language. Inside every single cell in your body, and you have approximately 37 trillion of them, there is a strand of DNA that contains roughly 3 billion base pairs. Those base pairs are arranged in a precise sequence that carries specific, complex, functional information. Instructions, code.
The information density of DNA makes our most advanced computer storage look primitive. A single gram of DNA can theoretically store 215 petabytes of data. That's 215 million gigabytes in something you cannot see with the naked eye. But here is the deeper question that stops materialist philosophers in their tracks. Where did the information come from? We know from universal human experience that information, language, code, instructions, always comes from a mind. Always, without exception. We have never observed information arising from non-directed physical or chemical processes. Not once. Not in any laboratory. Not in any natural setting. The SETI program, the Search for Extraterrestrial Intelligence, scans the skies for radio signals from other civilizations. What are they looking for? Information. A sequence that cannot be explained by natural processes. A signal that implies a sender. We are looking to the stars for exactly what is already coiled inside every cell of your body. 3 billion base pairs of precise, functional, complex, specified information. And the materialist explanation for where it came from is it happened by chance over time. Francis Crick himself, co-discoverer of DNA, committed atheist, eventually found that explanation so inadequate that he proposed a theory called directed panspermia, the idea that life on Earth was seeded by an alien civilization. He couldn't make the math work for life arising spontaneously on Earth, so he pushed the problem to another planet. But of course, that doesn't solve the problem, it just moves it. Where did the alien civilization come from? The information in DNA points to a source, a mind, an intelligence that existed before the first cell. The third thing, consciousness. This one's personal. You are having an experience right now. You are not just processing information, you are aware that you are processing information. You have a sense of yourself as the one doing the experiencing. There is something it is like to be you, right now, in this moment, listening to these words. Philosophers call this qualia, the subjective, felt quality of experience. The hard problem of consciousness, named by philosopher David Chalmers, is one of the most daunting unsolved problems in all of science and philosophy. Not because we don't understand the brain, we understand a great deal about how neurons fire, how electrochemical signals travel, how different regions of the brain correlate with different experiences. The problem is explaining why any of that produces subjective experience at all. Why aren't we just biological robots, processing information, responding to stimuli, with no inner life whatsoever? Why is there something it is like to see the color red, to hear music, to feel grief or joy, or the specific ache of missing someone you love? The physical description of the brain, neurons, synapses, electrical signals, does not contain consciousness anywhere in it. You can describe every physical process in the brain completely and accurately, and the description will not mention or explain the felt quality of being a person. The materialist explanation is that consciousness is an emergent property of complex information processing. But emergence doesn't solve the problem, it just restates it. Saying consciousness emerges from neurons is like saying wetness emerges from water molecules, except that wetness can be fully explained by the physical properties of H2O molecules and their interaction. Consciousness cannot be explained by any physical property of neurons. Many serious philosophers and scientists, including some who are not theists, now acknowledge that consciousness may be fundamental to reality rather than produced by it. That is precisely what the Bible has always claimed. In the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with God, and the Word was God. The original Greek word for word is logos, reason, mind, intelligence, the rational principle underlying all things. Consciousness is not an accident of matter. It is the ground of reality, and you carry a reflection of it inside you. The fourth thing, prophecy. This is where the conversation shifts from physics to history, because we can test prophecy, and the results are extraordinary. The prophet Isaiah wrote in approximately 700 BC about a figure who would come, who would be despised and rejected, a man of sorrows, familiar with suffering, who would be pierced for our transgressions and crushed for our iniquities. The punishment that brought us peace would be upon him, and by his wounds we would be healed. He was writing about a specific person 7 centuries before that person was born. Psalm 22, written by David approximately 1000 BC, describes a scene with haunting specificity. The hands and feet pierced, the bones out of joint, the mockers circling,
the garments divided by lot, the cry, my God, why have you forsaken me?" Crucifixion was not invented until approximately 500 BC, 5 centuries after this psalm was written. It was not practiced in Israel at all. David had never seen a crucifixion. He had no framework for what he was describing. And yet, Psalm 22 reads like an eyewitness account of the crucifixion of Jesus of Nazareth. The prophet Micah wrote in 700 BC that the ruler of Israel would come from Bethlehem Ephrath, a specific obscure village in Judah, out of whose goings forth have been from of old, from ancient days. Jesus was born in Bethlehem. Daniel, writing in approximately 530 BC, gave a timeline for the coming of the Anointed One that, when calculated using the Persian calendar and the decree of Artaxerxes to rebuild Jerusalem, places the arrival of the Messiah within the 1st century AD, during the Roman rule. Mathematician Peter Stoner calculated the probability of any one person fulfilling just 8 of the messianic prophecies by chance at 1 in 10 to the 17th power, 1 in 100 quadrillion. Jesus fulfilled not 8, over 300. The fifth thing, the resurrection. We have to go here, because this is the linchpin. If Jesus rose from the dead, everything changes. Every claim he made, every promise he gave, every word of scripture that points towards him. If he rose, the story is true in the deepest possible sense. And if he didn't, then as Paul himself wrote, our faith is useless and we are to be pitied above all people. Paul was not afraid to put it on the line. So what is the historical case? There are 4 facts that the vast majority of New Testament historians, including skeptical scholars who do not begin from a position of faith, accept as historically established. 1. Jesus died by crucifixion under Pontius Pilate. This is attested by Roman historian Tacitus, Jewish historian Josephus, and multiple early Christian sources. It is not seriously disputed by any credible historian. 2. The tomb was empty. The earliest opponents of Christianity did not claim the disciples were lying about the empty tomb. They claimed the disciples had stolen the body. That argument, recorded in Matthew 28, only makes sense if the tomb was actually empty. Nobody argues against an empty tomb by saying the tomb was full. 3. Multiple people reported seeing Jesus alive after the crucifixion. Not just one person, not just the disciples. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians 15, written approximately 20 years after the crucifixion, that Jesus appeared to Peter, then to the 12, then to more than 500 brothers at one time, most of whom are still alive. He is saying, go ask them. They are still alive. You can verify this. 4. The disciples were transformed. Men who hid behind locked doors after the crucifixion, within 7 weeks were standing in the streets of Jerusalem, publicly proclaiming the resurrection. They were beaten for it, imprisoned for it, executed for it. People die for things they believe to be true. People do not die for things they know to be fabrications. The hallucination theory does not explain the empty tomb. The And body theory does not explain the transformation of the disciples or the hundreds of witnesses. The wrong tomb theory does not survive contact with the fact that the authorities who wanted to suppress the resurrection had every motivation to produce a body and did not. The resurrection is the best attested miracle claim in the ancient world, and the explanation that best fits all four historical facts acknowledged by scholars across the theological spectrum is that something happened in that tomb. The sixth thing, your life. And now I want to speak to you directly. Not about physics, not about prophecy, not about philosophy, about the moments you cannot explain. The time you prayed something specific, something nobody knew, and it happened. The moment a stranger said exactly the right thing at exactly the right time. The dream that came true. The rescue that arrived so precisely it left no room for coincidence. The door that closed and you were furious until you saw what was on the other side of the one that opened. I am not asking you to make those moments carry more weight than they can bear. I am not asking you to build your entire theology on personal experience. But I am asking you not to dismiss them. Because there is a God who is described throughout Scripture as the one who sees, who knows the number of hairs on your head, who orders your steps, who works all things together for the good of those who love him, who is close to the brokenhearted, who catches every tear. That is not the description of a cosmic force. That is the description of a person. A person who has been present in your story in ways you have only partially recognized. And the doubt that comes, the silence, the unanswered prayer, the suffering that makes no sense, that is not evidence that he is gone. It is evidence that you are in the middle of a story that is not finished. Joseph in the pit did not know what the palace looked like. The disciples on Saturday did not know what Sunday was coming. You are not at the end of the story. You came into this video with a question. Maybe it was quiet, maybe it was roaring. And I can't prove God to you the way a mathematician proves a theorem. Faith will always require a step that evidence alone cannot take for you. But I can tell you this. The universe is fine-tuned to a precision that obliterates the idea of accident. The information in DNA points to a mind before matter. Consciousness remains inexplicable on purely material terms. The prophecies point to one person across centuries and cultures. The resurrection has stood up to 2,000 years of the most hostile scrutiny in human history. And somewhere in your own story, in the moments you have never fully been able to explain, there are fingerprints. They were always there. You just needed someone to see them. If this landed, share it with someone who is in the middle of their doubt right now, because this is exactly what they need. Like if any one of these shifted something in you. Subscribe because we're just getting started. And drop a comment. Which of these 6 things hit you the hardest? I genuinely want to know. I'll see you next week.